Turn around, old man. This road belongs to the lake residents now. That was what my neighbor, Bradley Whitmore, said, while his contractors locked a steel gate across my private road. Then they dropped 6 concrete blocks in front of my truck. Behind that gate sat 12 lake homes. 3 were under contract. 4 were listed as luxury rentals. 2 had renovation crews scheduled that week, and every single one of them depended on the road Bradley had just blocked. The problem was simple. That road was not his. It was not shared. It was not county-owned. And it was not controlled by any lake association. It was mine. Bradley thought he had secured the road. What he had actually done was create a legal access defect on every lake home behind him. Because in my basement, inside an old green metal cabinet, was a recorded deed from 1978. And buried inside that deed was one clause Bradley never bothered to read. By Friday morning, that clause would freeze 3 home sales, shut down 4 rental permits, stop 2 renovation approvals, and expose the fake road improvement fee Bradley had already started collecting from his neighbors. Before you decide who was right, ask yourself this. If someone blocked your private road and called it community property, would you move the gate yourself, or would you open the file? My name is Eli Mercer. I am 62 years old, and I live at the end of Mercer Bend Road, in a cabin my father built before most of those lake houses even existed. My cabin is not fancy. It has pine walls, a stone fireplace, a tin roof that sings when it rains, and a front porch that looks out toward the eastern bend of Lake Hollis. Compared to the glass lake houses on the ridge, it looks small. But the road to that cabin matters more than any mansion behind it. My father, Raymond Mercer, bought that land in 1976. Back then, Lake Hollis was quiet, mostly fishermen, retirees, and summer families, with folding chairs, coolers, and old aluminum boats. The road to our place was nothing but 2 muddy tire tracks through the pine trees. My father built Mercer Bend Road himself, not with a committee, not with a developer, not with a road improvement fund. He built it with a borrowed dozer, 2 dump trucks of gravel, a transit level, and more stubbornness than money. I was 12 when he first took me out there with a shovel. He pointed at the road and said, "Eli, remember this. Land doesn't care who talks loudest. Land only remembers what's written down." At 12, I did not understand what he meant. At 62, I understood it too well. When a developer bought the wooded acreage behind us in 1978 and wanted to build 12 lake homes, my father did not sell the road. He allowed access. That difference mattered. The developer needed a way for buyers to reach those lots. Mercer Bend Road was the only practical route. My father could have fought him, but he was not unreasonable. He understood that land changes. People move in. Families need roads. Ambulances need access. Fire trucks need room. So he signed a limited residential easement. The lake homes could pass over Mercer Bend Road. Delivery vehicles could use it. Emergency services could use it. But the land under the road stayed with my family. The road stayed ours. The deed said so. The county plat map showed it. And the easement made one thing clear. The lake homes had permission to pass. They did not have ownership. For more than 40 years, that arrangement worked. Not perfectly. Nothing involving neighbors and roads works perfectly forever. But it worked. The lake homeowners used the road. I maintained it. Some helped. Most did not. A few sent checks in the spring for gravel. Others waved as if the road maintained itself. But nobody tried to pretend they owned it. Until Bradley Whitmore arrived. Bradley bought the largest house on the ridge in April. You could see it from almost anywhere on the lake. 3 stories of glass, cedar, and stone. A dock that looked more expensive than my entire cabin. A black Range Rover in the driveway. A white wake boat at the slip. And Bradley himself, standing with his hands on his hips, like he was inspecting a resort he had just purchased. The first time I met him, he did not introduce himself as Bradley. He introduced himself as the new owner of the Whitmore Lake Estate. That should have told me everything. I was spreading gravel near the low bend after a storm had washed out the shoulder. My old Ford was parked half off the road. The tailgate was down. I had a shovel in my hand. Bradley stopped beside me and rolled down his window. Then he looked at the road like it had insulted him. "You the maintenance guy?" he asked. I leaned on my shovel. "Depends who's asking." He smiled, but not in a friendly way. "Bradley Whitmore. I just bought the main lake house up there. Congratulations," I said. "This road is going to need serious improvement." I looked down at the gravel. It drains fine when people don't drive 40 miles an hour over the crown. He glanced at my truck, then at my boots, then at the sweat on my shirt. "I'm sure you've done your best," he said. But the property values around here require a higher standard now. There it was. Property values. That phrase people use when they want their preferences to sound like law. I said, "The road is safe." "It's rustic," Bradley said. "That's a real estate word for safe." He did not laugh. "I'll be speaking with the other lake residents. We need a formal plan." "You do that," I said. He rolled up his window before I finished speaking. For a few weeks, Bradley was just annoying. He emailed neighbors about dust. He complained about potholes that were not really potholes. He told one delivery driver that all packages should be routed through the lake entry point. There was no lake entry point. Then I saw something that stayed with me. A photographer was standing near the entrance to Mercer Bend Road, taking pictures of the gravel curve, the trees, and the old private road sign. Bradley stood beside him, pointing like he was staging a magazine cover. I asked what they were doing. Bradley smiled and said, "Marketing." I did not understand what he meant. Not yet. A week later, he started using a phrase that made my stomach tighten. Lake Residents Access Committee. The first letter came in my mailbox in June. It was printed on thick paper with a blue logo. The logo looked like a wave wrapped around a key. At the top it said, Lake Residents Access Committee, Mercer Bend Road Modernization Notice. I stood by my mailbox and read it slowly. According to Bradley's new committee, Mercer Bend Road was a shared lake community access resource. It required professional oversight for the benefit of all residents. The notice listed 5 demands. I was to remove my private road sign. I was to stop performing unapproved maintenance. I was to provide the committee with all road-related records. I was to keep my truck and equipment away from the shoulder. And I was to contribute $400 per month to the committee's road improvement fund. I read that last line twice. $400 per month. Paid by me. To improve my own road. The road my father built. The road I had maintained for decades. The road Bradley had used for less than 3 months. I folded the letter and put it in the glove compartment of my truck. Then I kept walking. That was my first mistake. I thought ignoring Bradley would starve him. But men like Bradley do not starve on silence. They feed on it. The next week, he cornered me near the mailboxes. 3 lake homeowners were standing nearby. Bradley was holding a clipboard. I have never trusted a man who brings a clipboard to a conversation where he has no authority. "Eli," he said loudly, "we need to discuss your non-compliance." I looked behind me. Then I looked back at him. "Are you talking to me or serving me?" One of the homeowners smiled. Bradley did not. "This road serves 12 families," he said. "One individual should not be allowed to control access for an entire community." "That sounds serious," I said. "It is serious." "Then you should read the deed." His smile tightened. "We're past old paperwork." I nodded. That is usually what people say right before old paperwork beats them. His jaw flexed. "This is about safety." "No, Bradley. It's about control." The woman beside the mailboxes shifted uncomfortably. Her name was Carol Jenkins. She owned one of the smaller lake houses, and she had always been polite to me. "Eli," she asked, "is the road actually private?" "Yes," I said. Bradley cut in. "It is functionally shared." I looked at him. "My kitchen is functionally where guests stand during Thanksgiving. That does not make it public property." Carol looked down, trying not to laugh. Bradley pointed his pen at me. "You are making this harder than it needs to be. You are making it something it is not." He stepped closer. "The residents are going to vote," I said. "You cannot vote yourself onto another man's deed." That was the last quiet conversation we had. After that, Bradley became organized. Or at least, he became loud enough to seem organized. He sent emails to lake homeowners. He claimed I was refusing to support road safety. He told a realtor that Mercer Bend Road had uncertain management. He complained to code enforcement about my private road sign. He said it was an unauthorized obstruction on a community access route. Then he sent the email that made my phone start ringing. The subject line was, "Emergency Access Liability." Bradley wrote that I was an unstable older resident who had refused reasonable safety improvements and was creating a dangerous access bottleneck for 12 lake families. He said the community could not wait for me to come around. He said action had to be taken before the road became a legal and emergency response liability. Then he attached an invoice. Road Improvement Assessment. $1,200 per household. Due immediately. Payable to the Lake Residents Access Committee. That was when I realized Bradley was not just trying to influence people. He was trying to build a paper trail where he looked like the responsible one, and I looked like the problem. A young county officer came to my cabin to investigate the sign complaint 2 days later. He was polite. He was new. He still had that careful tone government employees use before they have been yelled at enough to lose hope. "Mr. Mercer," he said, We received a complaint about signage on Mercer Bend Road. I invited him inside. Then I showed him the deed. He read the first page. Then the easement. Then the county plat. His eyebrows went up a little. This road is inside your parcel? He asked. Yes. And the Lake homes only have a recorded easement? Yes. He looked embarrassed. I'll update the file. I appreciate that. As he was leaving, he paused on the porch. You may want to keep copies of these records ready. I always do. He glanced down the road. People get strange when lake property is involved. I watched him drive away, and I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Bradley did not want a better road. He wanted control. And I did not know it yet, but he had already started selling that control to people who had never seen the deed. The morning Bradley blocked the road started with my dog Rufus. Rufus was 14, mostly deaf, half blind, and still convinced he had the authority to chase squirrels he could no longer see. I had taken him to the vet in town because his back legs were getting weaker. The vet gave me medicine, a sad smile, and the kind of advice that really means, start preparing yourself. I was not in the mood for Bradley Whitmore that morning. Rufus sat in the passenger seat with his gray muzzle on the window ledge. I turned onto Mercer Bend Road. That was when I saw the concrete blocks. At first, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. One block across the gravel, then another, then all 6. Behind them stood a black steel gate I had never seen before. Fresh posts, fresh hinges, fresh chain, fresh padlock, and a brand new sign bolted beside it. Private lake residents only. No trespassing. I stopped my truck. Rufus lifted his head and gave one tired bark. Bradley stepped out from behind the gate like a game show host revealing a prize. 2 contractors were tightening the last bolts. 3 lake homeowners stood behind him in golf carts. One of them was filming with his phone. Bradley raised a hand. Road is closed until further notice. I got out slowly. Not because I was weak, because my dash camera was still running, and I wanted every word clean. You put a gate on my road, I said. Road, Bradley said. No. The lake residents voted. No. You were notified. No. His face turned red. You don't get to just say no to progress. I looked past him. That was when I saw the orange stakes. My father's old survey markers had been pulled from the ground. They were lying in the ditch like trash. Something in me went very still. Those stakes were not just sticks. They marked the original line. My father had painted them himself, after the county surveyor set the road boundary. I remembered him kneeling in the dirt with orange paint on his hands. He told me some men would respect a line only after they tripped over it. I pointed to the ditch. Who pulled those survey stakes? Bradley glanced over like I had asked about weeds. They were in the way. The contractors froze. I looked at them. Which one of you removed recorded boundary markers? Neither one answered. Bradley snapped. Don't harass my crew. Then don't send your crew to trespass on my land. He laughed. You keep saying that like it means something. It does. Not anymore. That was when the sheriff's cruiser came around the bend. Bradley smiled. I could tell he thought the timing was perfect. Deputy Mark Henson stepped out of the cruiser. I knew Mark a little. In a county this small, you know most people by face, truck, or family trouble. Bradley rushed toward him. Deputy, thank God, he said. This man is interfering with a safety improvement approved by the lake residents. Mark looked at the concrete blocks, then at the gate, then at me. Morning, Eli. Morning, Deputy. Bradley blinked. You know him? Mark ignored that. What happened here? Bradley launched into his speech. He said the road was shared. He said the lake residents had voted. He said I had refused to cooperate. He said the gate was necessary for safety, security, property values, and emergency coordination. He said I had become hostile. He said I was trying to block 12 families from their homes. He used the word safety 7 times. I counted. When he finished, Mark turned to me. Eli, I pointed to the ditch. I want the report to show those survey markers were removed before you arrived. Bradley groaned. This is what he does, he said. He hides behind old paperwork. Mark looked at the stakes, then at the gate. Who authorized this installation? Bradley straightened. I did. On behalf of the lake residents. Do you own the road? Bradley hesitated. It serves our homes. That was not my question. A silence fell across the gravel. I said nothing. That is difficult. Saying nothing while a man lies about you in public is hard. But silence can be useful. Silence gives a liar room to build his own trap. Bradley took the room. This road has been used by lake residents for decades, he said. That establishes shared control. Mark looked at me. Do you have records? At the cabin. Bradley laughed. So now we all wait while he digs through a shoebox? I looked at Mark. I have the original recorded deed. the easement agreement, the county plat map, maintenance receipts, and photos of the original survey markers. Mark nodded. Until ownership is verified, nobody moves anything else. Bradley's smile dropped. You can't leave the gate unsecured. Mark looked at the locked chain. Looks pretty secured already. Deputy, he could cut it. Mark turned to me. Are you planning to cut it? No. Bradley smirked. I added, I want it removed legally. With a record. The smirk faded. Mark wrote something down. Good. Then we wait for the sheriff and county records. There was only one problem. I could not drive to my own house. Bradley's gate blocked the road before the cabin turnoff, so I parked at the old fire pullout. I took Rufus's medicine from the truck. Then I walked the back trail home. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes through pine needles, roots, and heat. 20 minutes to think about my father's survey stakes in the ditch. 20 minutes to decide Bradley had just changed the nature of the fight. Before that morning, he was a nuisance. Now he was a man standing on my land, blocking my road, using my property as leverage over 12 families. That required more than irritation. That required a file. In my basement, against the far wall, sat my father's green metal cabinet. It was ugly, it was heavy, and it was impossible to move without 2 men and at least 1 curse word. He had bought it from the county office when they replaced furniture in 1982. Every drawer was labeled in black marker. Taxes, well, septic, cabin, road. I opened the road drawer. The smell came out first. Old paper, dust, ink, time. Inside were folders my father had prepared before I was old enough to understand why they mattered. The original 1978 deed, the recorded easement agreement, the county plat map, a letter from the developer, receipts for gravel, culvert permits, drainage sketches, photos of my father standing beside the road when it was still raw dirt. I sat on the basement steps and read the easement again. I knew what it said, but there is a different kind of strength in reading the exact words when someone has just bet against them. The Lake homes could pass over Mercer Bend Road for residential access, but they could not gate it. They could not block it. They could not claim control over it. They could not use it commercially, and they could not change it without written consent from the Mercer landowner. One clause. That was all it took. Bradley's gate had violated every important part of it, but one phrase hit me harder than the rest. Commercial use. That word brought back the photographer. The pictures at the road entrance. Bradley's smile when he said, marketing. I went upstairs. I opened my laptop, then I typed Bradley's name beside Lake Hollis Rental. The first result appeared immediately. Whitmore Lake Escapes. Luxury lakefront weekend stays. I clicked. There was Bradley's house. Sunset photos. A fire pit. Wine glasses. Kayaks. White towels folded on beds. And a description written by someone who loved the word exclusive. Then I saw the line. Private gated lake road access included. I read it again. Private gated lake road access included. That was my road. I kept searching. 3 more lake homes were listed through Bradley's rental company, or through partners connected to him. All 4 used similar language. Gated road. Exclusive access. Private lake entry. Secure residents only drive. Then I found the booking page. A line item had been added beneath the nightly rate. Gated access premium. $275. Non-refundable. Now I understood. Bradley had not built the gate because he was afraid of dust, or potholes, or strangers. He built it because it made the lake homes look more valuable. He was packaging my father's road as an amenity. He was selling control he did not own. I printed every listing. Then my phone rang. It was Monica Greer, a realtor I knew from around town. Mr. Mercer, she said carefully. I represent buyers on one of the lake homes. I heard there may be an access dispute. There is no dispute over access, I said. There is an obstruction of access. A pause. So the homes do have legal access? Yes. Through a recorded easement. And who owns the road? I do. The silence on the other end told me everything. Finally, she said, that is not what we were told. By evening, I had 2 more calls from realtors. 1 message from a title company, and 1 email asking whether access to the lake properties was subject to private ownership approval. Then Carol called again. Her voice was lower this time. Eli, she said, did you approve a road improvement assessment? No. Bradley collected from at least 5 homeowners. How much? $1,200 each. I looked at the printed rental page on my desk, then at the deed, then at the easement. Bradley had not just caused a neighbor dispute. He had created a title problem, and he had started collecting money on a road he did not own. That was when I sent everything to the sheriff's office. The deed, the easement, the county plat map, the photos of the old survey stakes. The dash camera footage, the trail camera footage, the rental listings, the gated access premium, the road improvement invoice, and the emails from the realtor and title company. By then, Bradley's gate was no longer just a private argument between neighbors. It was affecting active property records, and it was tied to money. By late afternoon, Deputy Henson called me back. He said Sheriff Dalton wanted every party in one place before anyone touched the gate again. Since Bradley had already called an emergency lake residence meeting, the county agreed to bring the recorded deed, the plat map, and a licensed surveyor to verify the access line in front of everyone. The next night, Carol called me one more time. "You need to come to the pavilion," she said. "I know," I said. "The sheriff called me too. He's telling people you're trying to lock us out." I closed my eyes. "Carol, I did not put up the gate." "I know that now," she said, "but not everyone does." So I went. I arrived 10 minutes late on purpose, not because I wanted drama, because I wanted Bradley to speak before I entered. The pavilion was full: homeowners, spouses, 2 realtors, a contractor, and Bradley, standing near a folding table with a poster board behind him. At the top it said, "Mercer Bend Road Safety Plan." Under it were photos of my road, my truck, my cabin, my old wooden sign. One photo had my truck circled in red. Another had my cabin circled. That was how small Bradley was. He could not win on documents, so he used pictures to make me look like the problem. When I stepped inside, the talking stopped. Bradley turned with that fake, surprised smile people wear when they have been waiting for you. "Eli," he said, "glad you decided to join us." I stood near the back. I heard there was a meeting about my road. A few heads turned. Bradley's smile tightened. "Our road access, Eli. That is the attitude we are here to address." He clicked a remote, and the first image appeared on a small projector screen. It showed Mercer Bend Road after rain. "This is what we are dealing with," he said. "An outdated gravel access controlled by one individual who refuses modernization." A man in the front row said, "It does get muddy." "It's gravel," I said. "Gravel gets wet." Bradley ignored me. "We proposed a secure gate, proper signage, professional maintenance, and a shared contribution structure. Eli has rejected every reasonable step." I raised a hand. "Did you tell them who owns the road?" Bradley turned slowly. "Ownership is historically complicated." "No," I said. "It's recorded." A realtor near the wall crossed her arms. Bradley said, "This is exactly the problem. He wants to drag everyone into decades-old paperwork while 12 families need practical solutions." I looked around the room. 12 families have a recorded easement. I never threatened that. Bradley pointed at me. "You threatened it by refusing to cooperate." "No, you threatened it by blocking it." A murmur moved through the pavilion. Bradley raised his voice. "This road serves 12 lake homes. That makes it ours in every practical sense." I nodded. "By that logic, everyone who uses your driveway owns your garage." Someone laughed. Not loudly, but enough. Bradley's face hardened. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think it's simple." He leaned over the table. "Then let's make it simple. The sheriff is already involved." Headlights moved across the pavilion windows. A sheriff's cruiser pulled up, then a county truck. Sheriff Dalton entered first. He was a broad man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had the kind of presence that made a room lower its volume without being asked. Behind him came Deputy Henson, then Miss Alvarez from County Land Records and Access Compliance, then Pete Langley, a licensed surveyor, carrying a rolled map tube. Bradley's expression brightened again. "Sheriff," he said, "thank you for coming. Hopefully we can resolve Mr. Mercer's obstruction." Sheriff Dalton removed his hat. "That is why we're here." Bradley turned toward the room, satisfied. Then the sheriff continued. "We're here because someone installed a gate across a recorded access easement without consent from the landowner." Bradley's smile froze. I set my green folder on the table. Sheriff Dalton looked at me. "Mr. Mercer, do you have your deed?" "Yes, sir." I opened the folder and placed the old deed on the table. It did not look powerful. Old paper rarely does, but the whole room leaned toward it. Miss Alvarez put on her reading glasses and checked the recording number. "This matches County Record Book 214, page 77, she said. "Recorded October 3rd, 1978. Pete Langley unrolled the plat map. "This is parcel 9A, he said, tapping the paper. "Mercer property. The road lies inside the parcel boundary from County Marker 14 through the Lake Bend." He moved the pencil. "These 12 parcels have a limited residential easement over the road." Carol spoke first. "So we can use it?" "Yes," Pete said. "For residential passage." Bradley jumped in. "Exactly. Shared access." Pete looked at him. Access is not ownership. Ms. Alvarez lifted the easement document and read aloud. The grantees may pass and repass over Mercer Bend Road for residential access only. No gate, obstruction, widening, commercial use, signage, or transfer of control shall be permitted without written consent of the Mercer landowner. She lowered the page. The room went silent. That was the clause Bradley never read. That was the clause he had broken before breakfast. Sheriff Dalton looked at him. Do you have written consent from Mr. Mercer? Bradley did not answer. Do you have permission to install signage implying lake resident ownership? No answer. Do you have permission to place concrete barriers across the easement? Still nothing. Do you have permission to remove survey markers? Bradley snapped. I did not remove official markers. My contractors cleared old debris. The contractor near the wall spoke immediately. You told us to pull the orange stakes. Everyone turned. Bradley glared at him. The contractor continued. You said they made the gate look like it was on the wrong property. That was the first crack. The kind everyone hears. Deputy Henson stepped forward and laid printed stills on the table. These are from Mr. Mercer's dash camera and trail camera. They show the crew removing the stakes at 8:42 Monday morning. Pete Langley's face changed. Those stakes marked the easement boundary. Bradley said. They were old. Pete said. So is the deed. It still counts. A few people murmured. Bradley tried to regain control. Even if there were procedural mistakes, the gate improved security. The residents voted for it. Miss Alvarez looked at him over her glasses. You cannot vote yourself onto another man's deed. That sentence did it. The room turned. It was almost physical. People who had been sitting behind Bradley started looking at him instead of me. Carol stood. You told us Eli was trying to control us. Bradley said, he is. I opened my folder and spread the receipts across the table. Gravel, culvert replacement, drainage work, snow removal, brush clearing, 30 years of maintenance records. I never blocked anyone. I never charged a required fee. I never put up a gate. Monica, the realtor, stepped forward. You told my buyers the road was controlled by the lake residents. Bradley said. I said it functioned that way. No, Monica said. You said access was secure and gated. I placed the printed rental listings beside the deed. The sheriff picked one up. Miss Alvarez read the line aloud. Private gated lake road access included. Then I placed the booking page beside it. Gated access premium, $275, non-refundable. A man in the back cursed under his breath. Bradley raised both hands. That is marketing language. I looked at him. No, Bradley. That is my property in your marketing language. Then Carol pulled a folded paper from her purse. And what is this? She asked. She placed Bradley's road improvement invoice on the table. Road improvement assessment, $1,200. Payable to the Lake Residents Access Committee. Another homeowner stood. I paid that. Then another. So did I. A third man near the back said, You told us Eli had already been notified and the committee had authority. Bradley's face had gone pale. That money was for improvements. Sheriff Dalton looked at him. Improvements to property you do not own? Nobody spoke. So I continued. You took a road you did not own. You installed a gate you had no right to install. You pulled survey stakes your crew should not have touched. You put up a sign claiming control. You advertised that control to raise rental value. And you collected money from people by pretending this committee had authority. Bradley looked around the room. For the first time, nobody looked back like they believed him. That is not fair, he said. Sheriff Dalton looked at him. Fair has nothing to do with this. The deed is clear. Then came the part that made everyone understand the size of the problem. Ms. Alvarez explained it slowly. The homes were not condemned. Nobody was losing ownership. And nobody had lost the right to pass over the road once the obstruction was removed. But because the road was the recorded legal access for all 12 lake homes, and because Bradley had physically blocked that access while creating public confusion over ownership, the county could not certify clean access. Not until the gate was removed. Not until the survey markers were restored. Not until the access record was corrected. And not until the false representation of control was withdrawn from listings, title documents, and rental materials. That meant 3 pending home sales could not close cleanly. 4 short-term rental permits were suspended pending access review. 2 renovation approvals tied to contractor access were paused. Emergency access certification needed correction. Insurance underwriters could request updated proof of legal ingress and egress. And any rental listing using private gated access had to come down until the language was corrected. The room erupted. What does that mean? My closing is Friday. We have renters arriving this weekend. Our dock work starts Monday. Bradley, what did you do? Bradley pointed at me. He's the one holding the deed over us. Sheriff Dalton's voice cut through the room. Mr. Mercer did not obstruct your access. Your easement remains valid. The access problem was created when an unauthorized gate was placed across the road. That was the moment Bradley lost them. Not because I argued better, because the record spoke plainly. A man can argue with another man. He has a much harder time arguing with a deed, and a plat map, and a sheriff, and a county records officer, and a surveyor, and his own invoice sitting on the table. The next morning, Mercer Bend Road looked like a courtroom held outdoors. Sheriff Dalton was there. Deputy Henson was there. Pete Langley was there with new survey stakes. Miss Alvarez was there with copies of the recorded easement. The contractors arrived with a flatbed truck and a crane. Nearly every lake homeowner stood along the shoulder. They were there to watch Bradley's gate come down. Nobody had asked them to come. But people like to witness the undoing of a lie that cost them money. Bradley stood beside his Range Rover with his arms crossed. That posture had worked better when he still had followers. Now he just looked cold. The contractors cut the chain first. Then they removed the sign. Private lake residents only. No trespassing. The sign looked ridiculous in the daylight. A sign can say anything. That does not make it true. The crane lifted the steel gate off its hinges. It swung in the air for a moment. Then it landed on the flatbed. After that came the concrete blocks. One by one. Each one dropped onto the truck with a heavy thud that echoed through the trees. I stood beside the ditch and watched Pete reset the orange boundary stakes. Fresh paint. Fresh flags. A clear line. For a moment, I saw my father there, younger than I am now, kneeling in the dirt, orange paint on his hands, telling me some men only respect a line after they trip over it. When the last stake went in, I walked to my truck. I pulled out my old wooden sign, Mercer Private Road, recorded easement access only. The wood was cracked at one corner. The paint was faded, but the words were still true. I set it back where it belonged. Bradley finally spoke. This is ridiculous. Sheriff Dalton turned. What is? Bradley pointed at me. He shut down 12 homes over a gravel road. I looked at Bradley for a long moment. No, I said. You shut them down when you forgot a road can belong to someone poorer than you. Nobody laughed. Nobody needed to. Sheriff Dalton handed Bradley a written notice. It required him to pay for removal of the unauthorized gate and concrete blocks. It required restoration of the survey markers by a licensed surveyor. It required him to correct the false signage. It required him to notify affected real estate agents, title companies, and rental partners that Mercer Bend Road was privately owned. It required him to stop representing the road as controlled by any lake association or residents committee. It required him to provide a full record of every road improvement payment collected under the fake committee. And it required him to preserve all communications related to the gate installation, rental listings, and road assessment invoices. The refunds themselves would be a civil matter if Bradley refused. But by then, 5 homeowners were already demanding their money back in front of the sheriff. That last part changed Bradley's face, because he knew what was in those communications. By the end of that week, the damage was no longer theoretical. 3 closings were delayed. 4 rental listings went offline. 2 renovation approvals were paused. 1 buyer withdrew after learning the exclusive gated road did not belong to the seller, or the residents, or any lake association. 5 homeowners demanded refunds for the road improvement assessment. 2 rental guests requested refunds for the gated access premium. The gate installation and removal cost more than $18,000. Survey restoration, legal notices, title corrections, contractor fees, refund demands, and delayed sales pushed the early damage past $80,000. And that was before the homeowners started asking Bradley what he had promised, what he had charged, and why he had used their names to justify a gate on land he did not own. For a few days, my phone rang constantly. Some callers were angry. Some were scared. Some apologized before saying hello. A man named Dennis owned one of the Middle Lake houses. He asked me straight out, "Are you going to close the road on us?" "No," I said. "Your easement is valid. But you could make this hard. So could you," I said. "But I'm hoping nobody else wants to be Bradley." He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Fair enough." Carol came by Saturday morning with banana bread. She stood on my porch, looking down at her shoes. "I believed him," she said. "A lot of people did. He sounded so sure. That's how men like Bradley sell things they don't own." She looked toward the road. "Are you angry with us?" I thought about that. The truth was, I had been. Not forever, not deeply, but enough. It is hard not to feel something when people drive over your work for years. Then they believe the first man who tells them you are the obstacle. But anger is a poor surveyor. It marks lines where they do not belong. So I said, "You were never my problem." The lie was. Carol nodded. "I'm sorry. I know." She set the banana bread on the porch rail. "Is there anything we can do?" I looked at the road. "Read what you sign. Read what you vote for. And next time someone says old paperwork doesn't matter, ask why he's so afraid of it." That sentence made its way around the lake faster than gossip usually did. Within 2 weeks, the remaining homeowners asked for a meeting. Not at Bradley's pavilion. At my cabin. I told them they could come, but only if they understood one thing. I am not forming a committee. They came anyway. 7 homeowners sat on folding chairs in my yard, while I laid out copies of the easement agreement. Ms. Alvarez had given them clean copies too. But people trust paper more when the man affected by it is willing to explain it without shouting. I walked them through the rules. They could pass. They could receive deliveries. They could allow emergency vehicles. They could maintain reasonable residential access, with coordination. But they could not gate the road. They could not widen it. They could not sell access. They could not represent it as owned or controlled by the lake homes. And they could not remove signs, stakes, gravel, posts, or drainage features. A younger homeowner raised his hand. "What about rental guests?" "That depends," I said. "The easement says residential access. Short-term commercial rental traffic is something you need legal guidance on, not Bradley's opinion." That made a few people uncomfortable. Good. Comfort was what had made them careless in the first place. Dennis asked, "Would you be willing to set up a proper maintenance contribution?" "Yes," I said. "Voluntary, transparent, paid into a separate account used only for gravel, culverts, and drainage. No gate fund, no fake committee, and no one gets to pretend payment equals ownership." They agreed. Not because they suddenly loved me, because they finally understood the alternative. When rights are unclear, everyone suffers. When records are clear, even difficult neighbors can survive each other. 3 months later, Mercer Bend Road looked almost the same as it had before Bradley arrived. Gravel, pine shadows, a ditch line that carried rainwater down toward the low bend. My old sign stood where it belonged, but there were changes. The county parcel record now had a clearer note about the private road and recorded easement. Emergency services had updated access instructions. Every lake homeowner had a copy of the easement summary. The delayed closings eventually moved forward. The rental listings were rewritten. The renovation approvals were restored, after access was clarified. The road improvement payments were refunded after the homeowners threatened a civil claim. The voluntary road maintenance fund existed, but the statements were public to everyone involved. No one called it a lake access committee. No one sent me a $400 invoice. No one charged renters for gated access. And beneath my old wooden sign, we added a smaller metal one. Private road. Recorded residential easement. No gate, or obstruction without landowner consent. It was not pretty. It did not improve property values, but it told the truth. Bradley sold his lake house before the next summer. His listing did not mention exclusive gated access. I checked. The new owners came by before moving in. A young couple with 2 kids and a golden retriever puppy. The puppy immediately ran circles around Rufus. Rufus had ignored most of the world for a year, but he stood up and barked like he had been waiting for that exact insult. The husband shook my hand. "We read the access paperwork," he said. "We understand the road is yours," I said. "Then we are already off to a better start." His wife looked toward the ditch. "We also heard you know how to fix drainage." I sighed. "Unfortunately, yes." A week later, after a heavy rain, I saw the husband near the culvert with a shovel. He was clearing leaves. Not waiting for me. Not complaining. Just helping water go where it needed to go. My father would have liked that. Because that is what men like Bradley never understand. Ownership is not just control. It is responsibility. It is waking up after a storm to check whether the gravel washed out. It is keeping records nobody wants to read until the day those records save them. It is paying for repairs other people drive over without noticing. It is knowing the difference between permission and possession, between access and ownership, between a loud vote and a recorded right. Bradley thought power was a locked gate. He thought power was a fake committee, a printed notice, a rich house, a contractor crew, and 12 frightened neighbors standing behind him. But real power was sitting in a green metal cabinet in my basement, yellowed at the edges, recorded in 1978, waiting for the wrong man to touch the wrong road. When Sheriff Dalton read that deed out loud, it did more than open my gate. It opened everyone's eyes. Bradley thought ownership meant control. My father taught me it meant responsibility. And in the end, the road stayed open. Not because Bradley demanded it, because the deed told the truth. So tell me, If your neighbor blocked your private road, ripped out your survey stakes, charged people for access he did not own, and tried to sell your property as part of his lakefront profit, would you have moved the blocks yourself? Or would you have done what I did, kept quiet, opened the file, called the sheriff, and let one old deed shut down 12 lake homes?